Well, hello YouTube, it's me, Fortmaster, and welcome back to another OSP, or Overly Sarcastic Productions, reaction. So, yeah, it's been a while since I reacted to them, and the last time I did it, it was one of Blue's video, because there's two people on this channel, Red and Blue. Blue focuses more on, like, history, so, like, actual historical events, as the last video, the Chicago Tribune, was it the Chicago Tribune? You know, like stuff like buildings, architecture, history, that sort of stuff. Red is much more focused on stuff like fiction. I know one of the long-running series on their channel has been a retelling of A Journey to the West, which I've been having a lot of fun. I should probably do a reaction to the next part that comes out. Anyway, I'll get around to that when that happens. Today's video is Trope Talk. This is another one of the longer running series on their channel where they, talk about basically TV tropes. How they're done well, how they're done not well, the history, all that sort of stuff. And then again, I don't know how much you can go into the history of Betrayal, because I would think that kind of is as old as the human species itself. So, as always, original is linked in the description. And as well as, I think it's that corner, I'll be doing a little pop-up to the episode of Deus Ex Human Revolution that's going to be coming out on the same day this is. So if you want to watch that, without further ado, let's actually watch this.
It would be a pretty massive understatement to say that fictional characters spend a disproportionate amount of time disagreeing with each other on anything and everything from small-scale differences of opinion to grand world-shaping moral battles. If two characters aren't literally two copies of the exact same guy, they're liable to have different personal motivations,
I'm gonna kill the Joker with my bare hands. Okay there, Superman.
And or values, leading to fun disagreements on anything from what to have for dinner to the moral and ethical considerations of killing their bad guys. Even characters that get along very well with each other aren't going to have the same opinions on everything.
But
and that simple fact allows for the vast majority of interesting character dynamics, since characters usually have more to say when they're disagreeing with each other than when they're 100% agreeing. Hell, in the right circumstances, a character can easily have reason to disagree with themselves, meaning even solo plot lines aren't free from it. This structure of disagreement is generally called...
Oh, that's the one thing. I swear, in every one of these trope talks, Avatar: The Last Airbender is brought up at least once. I mean, that just goes to show how good of a show it was.
Conflict, and is considered a vital staple of storytelling, which is broadly accurate but a little unhelpful in the phrasing, because sometimes it makes people think that stories need to have people constantly loudly arguing in order to count as stories. In actuality, conflict is a very broad concept that covers a lot of ground from very large to very small, and among other things, there's kind of a spectrum of disagreement. It's not a binary switch between completely on the same page and completely opposed at all costs.
Yeah, one would think that disagreeing where to go for dinner is not on the same level as deciding whether to kill your enemies or not.
It's very common for characters to want the same thing but have different ideas of how to get it, which is a form of
You
conflict.
guys are still talking.
Or for one character to have a personal motivation that
burning the town right now, and yet we still aren't getting paid. Well, that seems more like not only just, disagreement as different corners of the morality square. Morality square? The D&D thing.
The gang, which can become a conflict depending on their circumstances, or for a character to have reservations about a goal that their allies are 100% on board with pursuing, which is a low-stakes conflict with the potential to escalate. Different wants and needs and motivations mean the characters want different things in different ways, and in the most basic possible sense, that's conflict, even if they end up working towards the same thing and ultimately being on the same team. This definition of conflict is so broad that it borders on total meaninglessness, but that's good news for us, because it means stories have conflict isn't a rule anyone needs to stress about following, it's just a mostly true observation. But when a conflict of motivations gets intense enough, the characters' clashing desires can break away from each other, and in the event that this produces a schism in loyalties, this character conflict can become a full-on betrayal.
Oh my god, Okay, I'm probably going to edit it in before I have this realization, but if man, this is going to be an old internet joke, but if anybody's ever heard the old song somebody made based on the old reviewer Spoony, there was literally a song about betrayal.
Now, betrayal is one of those slightly weird tropes that is completely dependent on context, because on paper, what it describes is very simple and completely morality-free. A character previously thought to be aligned with one group of one or more characters turns out to have an agenda that is at odds with that group's plans and or values, and takes an action that is at cross purposes from their agenda. But that's a very dry, legalistic way to frame something so emotionally weighty. It means something. Calling a character a traitor is an instant gut punch. When a character betrays the heroes, it's crushing. Expect heartfelt declarations of broken trust and frequently a permanent black mark on the treacherous character's reception. They might end up being liked and trusted even less than the card-carrying bad guys who've been openly evil right from the start. Treachery is a special kind of evil that in many cases renders the traitorous character permanently untrustworthy by characters and audiences alike, unless their treachery is happening to the bad guys. When a villain's right-hand man or abused evil minion or wide-eyed idealist recruit starts making "wait, this sucks actually" noises, it's most common for the audience to wholeheartedly root for them to backstab the people who trust them so they can break away for their own good and the good of the plot. These defectors from villainy are often seen as more trustworthy because their moral compass steeled them out from the shadow of evil and onto the side of good. From a certain point of view, anyway.
Oh! You know, that reminds me of an example of a show that I don't hear very many people talking about, and it was, what was it called? That was it. It was called Shaggy and Scooby-Doo Get a Clue. It was not a spin-off show, but it was a Scooby-Doo show where the main characters were just Shaggy and Scooby. Oh god, when did it come out? Give me a second here. 2006? Really? I mean, I guess that tracks. I remember watching it in school. So, yeah, basically, the plot of Shaggy and Scooby-Doo Get a Clue was that, Shaggy's uncle, who's a rich, billionaire inventor, goes missing and leaves his mansion and his fortune to Shaggy. So it turned out that that Shaggy's Uncle Albert, that was his name, remember that, had invented, a super formula that some evil scientist was trying to get his hand on to, rule the world? Or actually rule the world, because he was German, of course he was. And he had hidden it in the he had hidden the recipe in the Scooby snacks. So it came up, so basically the whole thing of every episode was, the problem was fixed by Scooby eating one of the Scooby snacks and getting, a superpower. But that kind of goes off, I'm going off on a tangent here. Basically, the scientist's right-hand man was actually Uncle Albert in disguise, because Dr. Albert was disguised as Dr. Trebla.
Do you have any idea who the informant is, sir?
No.
Yeah, I know. And the last episode of the series, when Dr. Trebla unmasks himself to be Uncle Albert in front of, oh god, what was the villain's name now? Dr. Phineas Fibes, that was it. In front of Dr. Phineas Fibes, you can see in his face how heartbroken and terrified he is, because it's kind of like a running thing through the show. Dr. Fibes has no friends, and he thought of Dr. Trebla as his only friend. So the fact that he gets, when Dr. Trebla unmasks himself to be his mortal enemy, actually, you can see in his face how heartbroken and just sad and angry he is. It was absolutely nuts. And of course, it left on a cliffhanger because they were hoping for a third season, but of course it never actually got made because the show didn't really get that good reviews. I mean, I remember really liking it. Just there were a lot of people that didn't like it because it was different, and the animation does look a little but I've been going on this tangent for a little too long. Let's get back to actually watching the reaction, shall we?
The trope of betrayal is in this very weird, completely subjective space, where depending on who the audience and/or writer personally sides with, a traitor's character can either be an irredeemable monster or an unconditional moral paragon, and most of the time, this assessment has absolutely nothing to do with anything they've actually done and why, but rather who they've done it to. A character becoming disillusioned with their organization after learning about its sinister origins and breaking away to oppose them at every turn is a hero origin story if you're in She-Ra, and a sequel villain setup if you're in Doctor Strange. A character backstabbing their trusted mentor and longtime companion for the sake of someone they love is bad when that mentor is generally good guy Mace Windu, but extremely heroic and applause-worthy when that mentor is big bad Palpatine. Now the thing is, while the real
Darth Vader did it both ways.
World is a very morally complex place where simple black and white 100% good versus pure nasty evil situations are much rarer than you'd be led to believe. It's silly to pretend that this nuance extends into fiction land. Obviously, in the world of simple moral conflicts, betraying a bad guy is good and betraying a good guy is bad. Betrayal is not an inherently moralized act, despite the absolutely rancid vibes of treachery. The action just takes all the morality.
I've secretly been morality this whole time.
The character's revealed motivation. If it turns out the traitor character has a moral line their skull-wearing boss wants them to cross, the traitor splitting from team bad guy is a good thing because it reflects their good guy moral compass. If the traitor character is splitting from the plucky protagonist posse because they're secretly driven by a lust for revenge at any cost, that's a lot more dubious because it reflects the understandable but generally bad motivation of vengeance. But things can get significantly more complicated. The character's motivation might have
all the
layers.
vibes, just
For instance,
all of
maybe
them.
they have to betray their friends because they're winding up to betray their mutual enemies even harder, but they can't do that if their enemies don't trust them. Needing to ingratiate oneself to a bad guy can drive a fundamentally good character to do all kinds of horrible things to maintain cover. And there's a ton of drama that can be derived from this. Or maybe there is
because I'm evil. Yes, I remember that line. Oh, that is so good.
Are in flux, and even they're not sure who they should side with, which is why their loyalties keep changing. Or maybe their internal motivations are totally solid, but they've always been kind of an independent actor with different priorities than the good guys, and a new situation causes them to switch sides without even necessarily noticing because their own priorities have never changed. Betrayal is a very big trope that covers a lot of ground, and while we're mostly going to be focusing on the traitor revealed variant, we can't really talk about it without acknowledging some of the other ways characters can turn on each other. Because, surprise, surprise, as much as I love categorizing and subdividing stuff into nice little clades, we still can't draw rigid delineations around a literary concept. Anyway, in the traitor revealed plot, the specifics of the traitor character's secret agenda is, unsurprisingly, a very important part of their role in the story. Generally, the way the story is structured is that this character spends the first chunk of the story with this agenda hidden from both their allies and the audience, passing for a completely regular and heroic good guy. Then there's a reveal when the audience learns of their treachery, sometimes but not always before the other characters do, and from that point onwards, the audience knows what this character is really about, which is typically something nefarious. Many betrayals take this form, though the audience's perspective is sometimes relocated. In some stories, the audience is following the traitor the whole time, and the intrigue is in watching them maintain their cover and plotting their evil doing. But the most common way these stories are structured are the ones where the traitor has been secretly following their own plan without the audience's knowledge. Of course, this can be a tricky bit of writing, because its explicit goal is to mislead the audience and the characters, and it can be hard to do that without cheating. In some stories, the traitor suffers from a case of bad plot twistitis, where the twist of their treachery retroactively makes the story make less sense, because their previous totally a good guy actions don't actually line up with whatever their actual secret agenda was. Sometimes it's almost like the traitor character knows the audience is watching, because they'll keep up their charade even when they're alone for the benefit of absolutely nobody, just for the sake of hiding the twist from the audience.
Right. Again, Frozen would have been so much better if he was handled anywhere near better. I don't know. I've never really watched the whole thing. I've only ever watched reviews, and I'm so burnt out on Frozen. I just want the whole thing to die. Please tell me they're not making a Frozen 3. I hope.
Traitor characters often also act like a completely different person after which can make sense depending on how much of an act they were putting on for the other characters, but can also weaken the impact of the betrayal. Part of what makes this trope hit so hard is that it forces the characters in the audience to try and reconcile what they already know about the traitor with the new information about them. How their kind and compassionate love interest could sell them out, or why their trusted comrade is running off with the MacGuffin, or what made their leader turn their back on everything they stood for. It recontextualizes their previous previous actions and makes the audience and characters question how much of what they know about them was a lie. This means if it turns out everything was a lie, the gut punch
Are you
is
even really
gone.
a Pisces?
Why would my close friend and comrade do this awful thing is a juicy question with a lot of exciting possibilities. Perhaps blackmail, brainwashing, a lust for revenge, a secret loyalty to the bad guys that predates their dynamic with the heroes, a hidden resentment that's been bubbling under the surface and never addressed until now. But how could this asshole stranger who was pretending to be someone I liked do something bad is a significantly less juicy question. A revealed traitor character tends to hit harder the more honest they are about their whole deal, because that usually makes their past actions make sense in hindsight. If the traitor's pre-treachery personality was 100% a lie, there's nothing of value for the treachery plotline to lose. The more lovable, sympathetic, and valuable the traitor is, the more it hurts when they split from the gang, and the more the other characters will feel it. If the traitor character...
Actually, a note on Terra that, granted, I've never read the original comics, but from what I've heard, comic Terra is so much different than Teen Titans animated series Terra. And from some of the stuff I've heard, it's kind of creepy.
Is genuinely their friend, love interest, mentor, whatever, then the betrayal means something to both of them. It damages or even sacrifices something extremely important. If the only gut punch is that the traitor character tricked their allies about their entire motivation and personality, the only thing the other characters are likely to feel about the whole situation is anger that they were tricked. You can't mourn the loss of something that never existed, and mourning is a huge part of what makes this trope hit. This is probably why betrayal is much less of an oof when it happens to bad guys. Good guys form meaningful relationships much more frequently than bad guys.
Showing a lot of
so
initiative there.
Realizes they're on the bad guy side of dips, they're usually not breaking too many hearts on the way out. But that's not always true. Sometimes a villain can actually be made somewhat sympathetic by highlighting how much it hurts them when one of their allies turns on them and leaves. It's usually much more downplayed than when the heroes deal with it, but it's still there and can make the villain feel a lot more human than just some monolithic force of evil. Of course, after the traitor is revealed, the story can go in a lot of different directions, which is where we run the risk of encountering the traitor as functionally a completely new character now whose previous actions make less sense retroactively. But in stories that don't do that, a lot of interesting things can still happen with them. Most commonly, they become a major antagonist, now freely and openly admitting the motivation they concealed for the first arc of the story. But that is not at all the only way this can play out. For instance, big ol' spoiler alert for the Justice League Season 2 finale, but in the final arc, it's revealed that Hawkgirl, who's been on the team since episode 1 and has been a stalwart and reliable teammate, was not in fact accidentally stranded on Earth by a malfunctioning wormhole with the implied motivation of wanting to find her way back to her homeworld of Thanagar. She was an advanced scout for the Thanagarian Armada, who turn up in huge numbers in the finale with the alleged goal of arming and defending the Earth from an alien threat, but have the actual goal of literally destroying the Earth in the process of creating a hyperspace relay for a tactical advantage against that aforementioned alien threat. When Hawkgirl's true...
Oh my god, I just realized that's the exact same... that's just like from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. The Earth was destroyed to make a hyperspace, like, bypass or something.
Allegiance is initially revealed, the League gets a little testy about her hidden motivation, and the Thanagarians declaring martial law on the Earth and branding the League as fugitives makes things significantly worse. But then things get really strained when they figure out the Thanagarians' real goal for Earth, which is also the tipping point for Hawkgirl, who already felt very bad about betraying the League by siding with her original loyalties and considers the destruction of the Earth to be absolutely unacceptable. So after revealing herself as a traitor and betraying the League, she betrays the Thanagarians, helping to save the Earth but tactically weakening the Thanagarians enough that the next time we see them, they've clearly lost that interstellar war they were doing. And of course, saving the Earth from a threat only wins you so many points when the threat was technically your fault. So at the end of the episode, a vote is held about whether or not she should be allowed to stay in the League. And instead of waiting for the results, she leaves anyway, hoping to find an identity for herself that isn't a lie. She's then absent for the vast majority of Justice League Unlimited, and when she eventually reappears, even though she's welcomed back into the League, it's clear there's still a lot of bad blood, both from civilians and from parts of her own team. Hawkgirl's case is interesting because despite starting out as a rather stock traitor revealed plotline, she was kind of in an impossible situation, torn between two very real loyalties she couldn't freely sacrifice, for bonus points with a love interest on both sides. She ended up betraying both of them and did in the end do what we consider to be the right thing, but the process was so fraught and painful for everyone involved that she basically spends 3 seasons recovering before she's finally back on the A-team in the finale. Now, the traitor reveal plot is good for a gut punch at the moment of reveal, but what this example demonstrates most clearly is that the real weight of the betrayal betrayal comes from the planting before it happens and the repercussions afterwards. So let's widen the scope just a little to unpack some of the other parts of the betrayal trope that hit exceptionally hard. On the planting side of the equation, traitor characters are often foreshadowed in stories by having one or more characters conclude that there has to be a mole in their team. In fact, one of the number one ways to anticipate that a traitor reveal plotline is on the horizon is when a protagonist actively points out that the bad guys always seem to be one step ahead of them somehow. This is very funny because the bad guys are always winning is a diabolus ex machina that tons of stories do without explanation, and it's generally expected that the audience just has to suspend their disbelief about it and accept that the heroes will never ever win until the grand finale, because that's what makes the plot go. But when the heroes call this out, like it's not just a literary convention to drive escalating stakes, it's a sign that we're supposed to think it's weird and start questioning why and how the bad guys can so easily thwart the good guys' plans. And of course the answer is that they have a mole on the inside. One of the alleged protagonists is feeding them information to further their own secret, sinister agenda. These plot lines can be intriguing, but they can also be quite frustrating depending on how the characters handle it, because of course a plotline about the heroes suspecting each other of being secret bad guys is a good way to get them at each other's throats, and thus hurting their innocent friends in the hunt for the one person who'd actually kind of deserve it. This is a good source of drama depending on how it's played, though it can be frustrating to watch, because it relies on the characters making a lot of unwise decisions which can rankle an audience if it goes on for too long. There's also the variant where the characters receive some sort of supernatural or futuristic warning that one of them will betray the others, and each character worries that somehow they'll be the one who turns for whatever reason. Or maybe the warning even gets specific about which character will supposedly betray them, usually a total paragon who it seems would absolutely never do that. These stories usually have some kind of prophecy twist, like maybe the action that looks like a betrayal has a completely reasonable but inobvious explanation, or the character in question doesn't betray anybody, they just got brainwashed or replaced with a doppelganger or some other thing that morally absolves them. But however it's framed, there's plenty of drama to exploit from a plotline where characters are anticipating a betrayal, because that drives them into conflict with each other, even with the characters that aren't traitors. If it doesn't come across as an idiot plot, it can be pretty tense. And the setup for the betrayal can get a little weird in edge cases, like in the stories where a character thinks that they've been black and white betrayed, but the reality is more complicated. For instance, when a former bad guy decides that being bad is not for them and defects to Team Good Guy, their former bad guy buddies might feel very personally betrayed. And the thing is, from their perspective, they have been betrayed, even if the motivation for it was the greater good and it wasn't in any way personal for the newly minted good guy. From their perspective, they just got traitor revealed. You also get stories where a character thinks or acts like they've been personally betrayed, but it's just because they felt entitled to someone's loyalty or help and then didn't get it. For instance, maybe a character in crisis needs help and seeks it from a character who either can't or won't assist them, usually because they have a much more pressing concern, but sometimes because the person seeking help is a full-on antagonist asking a protagonist for help, and they have a reason to not want to do that. And the thing is, that still hits them like a personal betrayal and motivates some kind of revenge plot, producing a situation where the theoretically wronged party has a very protagonisty motivation, but only from their personal perspective, where their needs are the most important part of the story. This
just gotta say, loved Aquaman. That was a great movie. It was cheesy, but I loved it.
produces a dramatic disconnect where only the wronged party believes that a betrayal actually happened. And on a similar note, betrayal is also frequently a backstory element or an inciting incident because it is such a good motivator, typically filling characters and audiences alike with righteous fury at the wrongdoing inflicted by someone the characters trusted. This has almost no overlap with the traitor revealed plotline because that typically boils over very late in the game, while these betrayals hit early, sometimes even before the story really starts. Betrayals of this type usually become a character's primary motivation because they're so emotionally impactful and can be very damaging. Seeking revenge and/or reparations is very common after a backstory betrayal. As we discussed earlier, betrayal is a very special kind of gut punch that in many cases feels completely unforgivable and highly personal. A hero betrayed by somebody they trusted needs no other justification to spend the rest of their storyline trying to hunt down that person or avenge themselves on them. And of course, on the flip side, if a villain is or thinks they have been betrayed by one of the heroes, that internally motivates them in exactly the same way. Because again, betrayal is relative. At its fundamental core, betrayal is a difference of perspective that becomes so strained it schisms into a potentially irreparable break. Like all differences of perspective, it is thus heavily reliant on context and on which perspective makes more sense to the audience. Most tropes are tough to strictly define, but betrayal is probably the slipperiest one I've discussed so far, because even in the case of an individual story, it can be hard to nail down what does and doesn't count as a betrayal. It's most obvious in the huge, gut-punchy, unforgivable cases where the revealed traitor starts monologuing and cackling grappling to disguise the minute their true sinister nature is revealed, but betrayals come in all shapes and sizes, and characters respond to them in all sorts of ways. What's unforgivable to one might be barely worth mentioning to another. In a way, this trope is a very powerful tool when used for characterization, because it highlights part of a character's internal thought process that might not otherwise see the light of day very often. Cheerful, trusting, friendly characters might be rendered shockingly furious by the betrayal of someone they put their trust in, but they also might forgive and forget as happily as they do everything else. Angry, mistrustful loners who typically hold grudges for years might forgive a betrayal quicker than anyone because they understand letting a personal internal motivation take priority even if it screws over others.
Yeah.
Characters in conflict reveal new and frequently very interesting sides of themselves that aren't seen in any other context. And what is betrayal if not the culmination of a conflict? Of course it's good for characterization. It's like the narrative equivalent of turning up the heat under a pan of popcorn. It's going to get a lot louder, the stuff the heat is subjected to is going to change, and something might catch fire. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a betrayal will sometimes catch things on fire. That's definitely one way of putting it. Again, this is part of the reason why I love watching OSP. One, for Blue's like history and all that stuff, and two, for Red's talk about like literature and tropes and all this stuff. She could put stuff in. She can like put stuff into words that would take me like probably weeks of thinking to. Eloquent. That's what the word I was looking for. She's a lot more eloquent, much better with words. It goes to prove my point. Yeah. Betrayal. Again, I said everything I wanted to say during the video, ironically. So, yeah, that'll be it for now. Again, as I said, original is linked in the description, and in the top right corner is the link to today's upload, which is for Deus Ex Human Revolution. So, yeah. I hope you guys liked. If you did, leave a like, subscribe, have not, and I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.